Welcome in our Christians for Israel studio. Today I have a very special guest to introduce to you, Mrs. Marie-Louise Weitzenbeck from Vienna in Austria. She is the leader of our Christians for Israel team in Austria, and she coordinates all the activities in other European countries. Well, Marie-Louise, welcome in our studio of Christians for Israel. Can you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us something about how did you personally get involved in Israel?
Thank you very much, Cornelis, also for the invitation to be here today. Yes, my story is somewhat different from the usual story. Usually people read the Bible and begin to understand God's plans and purposes with Israel, the country and the people, and then grow into being more interested in Israel and the Jewish people itself and learn more about that. But for me, it was exactly the other way around. I was born in South Africa in a Dutch family. My parents and my brother, who was at that time 11 months old, only moved to South Africa 2 years before I was born. So my mother tongue was still Dutch all the years that I lived in South Africa. And from a very young age, I always say I think I was born singing, because from a very, very young age, I was always doing something with music. So my parents decided when I was 7 years old that I should get piano lessons. And actually up till my university years, I nearly had all the time Jewish professors. Now my first Jewish piano professor, Auntie Joyce Cooper, had 40 pupils, of which 38 were Jewish. And it was me and another little girl who were not Jewish. And so I had 38 Jewish friends, boys and girls, and I was very involved in Jewish living. They invited me for Shabbat, and I got to learn about bar and bat mitzvahs. And I must say, it was more than an interest. There was something about the Jewish life also so actively living according to the biblical calendar with all the biblical feasts. It really touched me deep inside, although I was still very young. But I felt that this is very, very significant. And but being involved in Jewish life was like a normal for me. Only much, much later I saw how actually special this time was in my life, and what a privilege it had been for me to grow up this way. So I always say jokingly that Saturday I was Jewish and Sunday I was a Christian going to church and living this parallel life and finding it very normal. But this, of course, had a huge impact in my life. Only later, when I started reading the Bible, I began to understand the texts, and I thought, oh yes, this is what had been logical to me without knowing how the Bible wrote about this or how it explained it. And so I then, after my school years, went to university, and I decided to study music, piano and harpsichord performance. And at the end of my music studies, I got awarded a scholarship for postgraduate in Vienna. And coming to Vienna, it was in the 1980s. There was literally no contact between Jews and non-Jews. And for me, this was very hard because the Jewish museum hadn't reopened. The Israeli embassy was like a fortress. Also, there were not open days in the synagogue like we have nowadays. So it was very, very difficult to have contact with Jewish people in the city of Vienna, where I studied. And I prayed to God that if He would want to use me to further dialogue between Jews and Christians or Jews and non-Jews, I would make myself available. Now, being a young person, I had no conception how this could work, but I just said it's very sad for me that there is literally no contact, and if I can do something to change this, please use me. Now, God listens to prayer, but of course He has His own timing. Yeah. So it took quite some time, and in the beginning of 2000s, I think it was 2001 or 2003, the president of Christians for Israel International, Reverend Willem Glashouwer, came to Vienna to do Bible teachings on Israel and the church and why Israel. So I went there, and in an instant, all the Bible verses that were like fluttering in my head loosely all came together. All the puzzle pieces came together. And I took it all in as a sponge. And afterwards, I went to him and told him about this, and we stayed in contact. And in the year 2007, he came then several times to Vienna, also then stayed with us, and our contact grew and grew, our friendship. And in the year 2007, he invited me to Holland to train the trainers. And at that stage, actually, my piano performing career was just taking off. And then this invitation came. So I was at a crossroads because I knew if I get involved in Christians for Israel, I will not have so much time to practice my piano. But I remembered what my prayer to God had been, and it was like a sort of a Esther moment that if God calls, you have to follow, and you did pray for it, so you should go. So I decided to follow the call and came to the Netherlands, and this actually then resulted in the founding of the Austrian branch of Christians for Israel in 2008. My husband and I founded it. Yes, so this is the story how it came to be actually in Austria.
Wow, wonderful. So you got involved in Christians for Israel and the founder of Christians for Israel in Austria. Now we are years and years further in time. What is Christians for Israel Austria doing?
Yes, well, we of course grew from a crew of 2 people. It was myself and Christfried Battenberg and my husband, who was very much traveling at that time, still helping wherever he could. But basically the team consisted of 2 people. And the first thing was to take up the newspaper. So in April 2008, the first thing we launched was the newspaper Israel Aktuell, which is up to today our most important tool to reach the people in Austria with all kinds of articles, spiritual, and also explaining the facts on the ground, which you don't get in the media, etc., background information to what is happening in Israel, etc. Yes, and we had some conferences and seminars, and after each conference, actually, people came to me and said, we would like to help, we would like to work with you. So actually, we today have a team of 12 people. Who grew, the team grew through the years, all volunteers. They all have their jobs, but they do whatever they can in weekends and in the evenings. And so we're a team of 12 people, and we have 2 students who do project work for us, like more the administration, etc., help there. And yes, we do 4 newspapers a year. We used to do 6, but we actually reduced it to 4. And in between, we issue a newsletter, or a friend's letter, as it's called, which is also printed. We've, of course, in the last years also started to be more active on social media to also reach the younger generation. So this is like Instagram. Facebook is not for the younger generation, but Instagram, and also WhatsApp groups, etc. And I would say one of the most important things we do is doing an Israel tour at least once a year, because there you can really change people's minds. We've taken people to Israel who have been very, very skeptical. And I said, well, just come along and be open and watch and feel and open your ears and your heart, and they come back totally different. Of course, it's beautiful to do Bible studies in Israel. It has a complete different impact. And just seeing and talking and meeting lots of different people in Israel makes such a huge difference. So the tours I also find enormously impactful. Yes, this is basically what we do. We have very good contact with the Jewish communities in Austria, especially, of course, in Vienna, where I live. This is very, very special that they really have actually began to trust us quite in the early years, and it's up to today that we really have great contact to different Jewish organizations also, and to the Israeli embassy. We always have very, very good contact with the Israeli embassy, and it's a mutual trust which is very special, I find. We don't take it for granted because Austria has a very sad history with the Jewish people. So having this trust today is really a gift from heaven for us.
How wonderful that you started praying, how can we get in contact with the Jewish community? And now what a wonderful cooperation and what a wonderful bond there is between Christians and Jews in Vienna and in Austria. Wonderful. We had 7 October. What changed in the activities of Christians for Israel in Austria after 7 October?
Yes, it didn't only change the Israeli reality and the Jewish life across the whole world, but also I think Christians who stand with Israel have also experienced a great change in their lives. So I must say, from the beginning, we tried to reach out not only to our friends in Israel, but also to the Jewish population in Austria. And it was very sad also to witness that even the strongest leaders of the Jewish organizations were absolutely shattered and feeling insecure, because very, very soon anti-Semitism rose also in Austria by 500%. Ooh. And not only from the right, which we were sort of used to, if you can say it like this, but also from the left. And also as we call it, the imported anti-Semitism, people coming from Arab countries who came with their own anti-Semitism. So we have it actually from every direction, and also, of course, very, very, very acutely in the social media. You can hardly keep up with the bashing of Israel and the Jewish people in the social media. So we've been very, very active in trying to put out the truth and the facts on the ground in social media. Apart from doing it in the newspaper, we've very strong, actually, the ties we had with the Jewish community have grown even stronger. On the 22nd of March, I was asked in Upper Austria to do a day on anti-Semitism. So we decided to do it from a historical perspective, from a spiritual perspective, and also have 2 Jewish voices, one from Israel, Aryeh Shalikar. He's a spokesperson of the IDF, Israel Defense Forces, in German and Persian language, because he's a German-Persian Israeli, and that was very impactful. And also the president of the Israelitische Kultusgemeinde of Upper Austria, of the Jewish community of the whole of Upper Austria. So we did this day on anti-Semitism, and I did the part of the history from Queen Esther till today. And it was actually astonishing. The audience were Christian leaders, and many of them were so shattered afterwards to see how actually anti-Semitism has been prevalent through all the centuries, very, very much, of course, from the side of the church, from the Christian side. That was the worst anti-Semitism for hundreds of years. And if you get it lined up, it's so impactful and so terrible to see that it seems that if it's ingrained in the DNA of the nations, that you just cannot get rid of this. And so that was very important. And on the 7th of April, we did a walkathon through Vienna. This was actually also very, very special because it was Christians for Israel in Austria. So our organization organizing it with 3 Jewish organizations.
Wow.
WIZO, the Zionist Women's Organization, that's already been in place since 1920. And then the Zusammen Vienna, Together Vienna, that's a group of young Israeli families living in Austria, in Vienna. And the 4th one was, let me think, the Jewish Austrian students. So these 4 organizations organized it together. Why on the 7th of April? Because this was exactly 6 months after the 7th of October. And we kept it very low profile. We put nothing out on social media, but we informed our people. And actually over 1,000 people took part in this walkathon. It was on a Sunday afternoon, the 7th of April, and we took it for 2 kilometers through the old city of Vienna. Of course, we had huge police escort, which is inevitable if you go with your Jewish friends and take the streets. 70% were not Jewish, and this also was seen in the Israeli media because there were interviews done on spot and immediately sent to Israel, and they were blown away that actually 70% of the more than 1,000 people were Christians walking together with the Jews. And at the end we had, in front of the Dome of St. Stephen's on the Stephansplatz, we had a sort of a declaration where famous actors read testimonies of hostages, because the whole walkathon was to free the hostages, bring them home now. So we had banners, we had Israeli flags, and nothing happened. It was totally calm. We had a few Free Palestine calls from the sides, but we just went on. We had peaceful Israeli music playing on loudspeakers. So the whole march was so peaceful, and I think this got to the people who saw this march coming by. We went past many coffee places. Youngsters gave pamphlets with the stories of the hostages, and some people then decided to get up and walk with us. And in the end, these testimonies of the hostages were very strong, because it was last telephone calls, etc., where the mother reported about what her son had said, or the father when the daughter had phoned. So these were these actually dialogues on telephone or telephone calls were read by very, very good actors. And I must say, over 1,000 people stood there crying. It was very, very touching and very, very impactful. So this was something we did together, and yesterday we got together and had a review of the whole event, and decided that as long as it is needed, we will stick together and plan future events together.
Special privilege.
Because it's so special, yes. Also for me to sit there and have their full trust, and I have the feeling I can say whatever I want, they understand what I mean. This is really very, very special. Then I must say also in Austria, the youth has been catching up. We had Israelity, which literally died down because of Corona. Nothing happened, so the young people get on with their lives, and we had to relaunch Israelity afterwards. What's also special is how did the relaunch really take place? The handful of young people who stayed with Israeli decided to do prayer Zoom meetings with young people. One with international, so English-speaking praying, and one Austrian group praying in the mother tongue in German. And actually through these prayers for Israel, the young people really got connected to each other and feel they now want to do more. So I'm taking a handful of them to Israel in May. Wow. And they absolutely want to help with harvesting or wherever they are needed. And there are more and more young people coming through prayer for Israel. Yeah. So it's a very special way that it's now developing.
Yeah, because you are your team as Christians for Israel in Austria, you already for many years have many young people involved in this mission. That's very special.
Yes, but as I said, through Corona, some just went other ways. And of course, the group is between 18 and 35, the Israelite group. So some, grow older, leave, or they marry and have young families, etc. So it's always a renewal. But I'm glad that the young people who are on board now actually all got on board because of praying for Israel. That's what started connecting them.
Very special, very important.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a blessing. Great. I want to ask you, Marie-Louise, what's in Austria at the moment the attitude of the government and the attitude of the media towards Israel?
We are very fortunate that we have a very pro-Israel government, absolutely standing with Israel from the beginning, and even more so from the 7th of October. We had Israeli flags on the Chancellor's office, on the Parliament, right through town, then also bring them home, screened on the walls of the Chancellor's office and the Parliament, etc. So there we are in a very fortunate position that the government we have now really is standing with Israel and behind Israel. The media, I think, like in many countries, after the shock of the 7th of October, they were very sympathetic towards what had happened, and but it took about 2 weeks. And then when Israel decided that they are going to do this ground offensive in Gaza, then the tables turned. And nowadays you mostly, actually, this is also why we did the walkathon, you hear nothing about the hostages. You see terrible pictures from Gaza, everything that Hamas puts out, like so and so many, deaths, etc. People turn their loyalty towards Gaza, forgetting that actually the people in Gaza are also suffering to a great deal because of Hamas and not because of Israel. And this we need to stress time and again, that the people suffering there, not that all of them are not in fault. I read that if there would be another election now, Hamas would still get the most votes. So there are still some people or the majority of the people in Gaza who still see Hamas as the strongest force. But I think there are also many who just would love to live in peace, and they can't because they're under this terror organization. And I think many people in this world fail to see that. And blindly only have sympathy towards the whole situation in Gaza and say that Israel is the aggressor. So actually the tables have turned, that Israel is now in the position of the aggressor in the eyes of many, which I find very, very sad. And I think this is also a beautiful thing that many teams from Christians for Israel. And right now we have a team from New Zealand and Australia in Israel helping where they can. German teams have been, Dutch teams have been and are still going. And from Italy there has been a team, and now an Austrian team will go. So I think that's the most important, or one of the many important things we can really do is show our love, show our support, and really go there, hug the people, show them our love, and help wherever we can. That's what real friendship is about.
Now you're not only the leader of Christians for Israel in Austria, you're also the regional director of Christians for Israel in Europe, the continent, In fact, that means that you coordinate the activities that the other teams are doing in Europe. Can you tell us something about the developments in the various teams in European countries?
Yes, of course, I'm responsible for the developing countries, not the European countries like the Netherlands and Germany, who are very, very big and have been working already for a very, very long time, for decades. So we actually, Willem Glashouwer and I went to Greece in December. They invited Willem to speak about why Israel and what has Israel to do with the Christian church. And then we decided that it would be good as a beginning to just have a lecture about the history of how the state of Israel came to be from 70 BC, the year 70, the Judeo-Roman wars, till 1948, and then again from 1949 to the year 2020, the Abraham Accords, and then from the 7th October onwards. And this was actually live streamed to the Greek islands, and the people hadn't heard the history spelled out so precisely. And in doing that, that was my part in Greece, to talk about the history or to explain it with many maps and photos. And the people said that it's so important to know how the state of Israel came to be, because it's accused of colonialism and worse things nowadays, that you can also argue it and debate it and tell your communities and your congregations about it, because you need this background information also to place the spiritual things in their correct place. So this was a very important conference we had in Athens in the beginning of December. Leon Meyer, the chairman of the International Board, and I went to Geneva to take place in a declaration there, also free the hostages. Actually, a little group there visited the president of the International Red Cross and also Volker Turk, the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And unfortunately, as we know, it wasn't very fruitful, because the hostages, there are still 133 hostages in Gaza that we know of. But yes, so we've tried to do, every branch is a little different. Albania is much into prayer meetings, like our Albanian team leader issues a prayer letter every month and reaches many, many people through Facebook with his prayer letters. In Denmark, they issue newspaper and also do a lot to clarify the facts on the ground in the situation in Israel. Switzerland also is very, very hugely into prayer and is actually planning a conference now also in this year. So it's much about praying and just telling the truth. Because if you only go by the media, you're actually lost.
Many people need more information.
Yeah, they need more information. They want more information, and enable also to be able to pray into the situation. You need to know what is happening and where to place it on the spiritual level. Then, of course, in the Ukraine, but that's an extra topic. The food parcels are still delivered, and Holocaust survivors visited, etc. So each country in Europe actually has its small part to play. In Austria, for example, Holocaust remembrance is very, very huge part of our work. Seeing our history, and I think the same you can say about Germany. These two countries have a special also remembrance work to do, that we cannot let the Holocaust be forgotten, and also in order to face the Jewish community and work together with them and keep their trust and win their trust, we have to address the Holocaust.
So all Christians for Israel teams in the various countries have their own scope and their own accent and a specific task and mission to speak about Israel.
Exactly.
Yeah. Marie-Louise, when we hear and see you speaking, passionate about Israel and our Christians for Israel mission to bring biblical understanding among Christians and churches worldwide, when we watch you, listen to you, what can we do for Israel practically in our daily life? What can we as Christians or as a viewer of this broadcast, what can we do for Israel?
Well, I think, of course, the most important is to pray, because God is in control and we should never be silent. We should be watchmen on the walls, reminding Him of His promises. So I would say we should be really on our knees every day praying for Israel and, standing in the gap for the people of Israel. And maybe also that God shortens this time of tribulations. And I think it's very, very important to keep contact with all our friends in Israel, to comfort them, to let them know, if you can on a daily basis, that they're not alone, that we are thinking of them, that we're praying for them, that we're standing absolutely behind them, come what may. And also keep very close contact to the Jewish people in our own countries, because they are also feeling it through the anti-Semitism that's rising so terribly in every country I know of. So we should also take care of them and give them an extra hug and let them know that we are standing with them, next to them, behind them, praying in prayer and also in deeds where needed, like taking the streets, doing a demonstration, going out with an Israeli flag, explaining. And then, of course, if possible, go to Israel, because this makes such a difference to the Israeli people that they see, wow, even in these difficult times, which could be maybe even be dangerous, because it is a war situation, still pack your things, go. There are many things to be done. There are so many organizations that tell you where you can help. There are spreadsheets of farmers who need help in harvesting, and every little thing makes a huge difference.
You mentioned prayer. You told me that you're very touched by praying the Psalms together with the Jewish people. Can you tell something about it? And perhaps you can close our broadcast with a prayer by reciting a psalm.
Yes. Yes, this is definitely a way in which we can very comfortably pray with our Jewish friends, our Jewish brothers and sisters, I may say, because the Psalms unite us. And we, as Christians, got the Psalms from the Jewish people, which we should be, and which I am very, very grateful for. David Nekrutman, a good friend of our Christians for Israel network, actually, when the war started on Facebook telling which Psalms they are praying, and that we can unite with the Jewish people in praying these Psalms. So one of the Psalms he mentioned is Psalm 20. It's actually a psalm which is prayed over for the king. The king, you can see also our king, which we pray to in a broader sense. And it's actually about that it's important to have chariots and horses on the ground if in need, but that's not what you should depend on. What you should depend on is God's help, and this expresses it very beautifully. So I would just read it. Psalm 20 for the director of music, a psalm of David. May the Lord answer you when you are in distress. May the name of the God of Jacob protect you. May He send you help from the sanctuary and grant you support from Zion. May He remember all your sacrifices and accept your offerings. May He give you the desire of your heart and make all your plans succeed. May we shout for joy over your victory and lift up our banners in the name of our God. May the Lord grant all your requests. Now this I know, the Lord gives victory to his anointed. He answers him from his heavenly sanctuary with the victorious power of his right hand. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. They are brought to their knees and fall, but we rise up and stand firm. Lord, give victory to the King. Answer us when we call. Amen.
Amen. Marie-Louise Weitzenberg from Austria, thank you for sharing your personal compassion with Israel and the Jewish people. Thank you for sharing all the things you are doing with your team as Christians for Israel in Austria. Thank you very much. May the Lord bless you, your family, all your team members in the very important work you're doing in the future.
Thank you.
And our viewers at home, thank you for watching this broadcast. And when you want to see more videos and biblical information about Israel, I would like to invite you to visit our international website, c4israel.org.